Impaired driving is a challenging and complex problem, and you can consider this startling fact. Last year, according to the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, more than 1 billion gallons of alcoholic beverages was sold in Texas. That's billion with a B, billion. And it's a staggering statistic for our state. All of us know too well the sad truth is that alcohol contributes to thousands of injuries and hundreds of deaths in our state every year when people get behind the wheel or on a motorcycle after they've had too much to drink. And I know as we came here today and as we gathered last night, I think it hits really close to home because it came to our attention that one of our partners, the Harris County Precinct 1, one of their officers, one of their deputies, Deputy Jesse Valdez, was killed last Wednesday on October 29th by an impaired driver that hit him head on. So, I mean, for y'all, I know we live this every single day, but I think for Deputy Valdez, it just only resonates even more the importance of why we're here today. He was 32 years old. He's a single father. He's survived by a 10-year-old son and a mother. And his life was taken by an impaired driver. So it resonates very close. Today he's being laid to rest. Today is his funeral. And if we could, in memory of this hero, is what I think as Deputy Valdez would be, could we take a moment of silence and our thoughts and prayers to go out with his son and with his family and all of the people that he worked with. Thank you. No one individual, we all know this, no one individual or organization alone can solve the problem of impaired driving. That's why the focus of our summit is on collaboration. Because we believe that by all of us working together, we can make our streets and highways much safer. We have a full program of excellent speakers to share their expertise and experience, and we hope you will be able to stay with us all day to hear them all. We'll be keeping our speaker introductions short today, so we invite you to read more about them because they're great speakers, but to read more about them and the credentials in the program itself. We'll begin with an overview of the problem of impaired driving, both in Texas and nationally. We'll take a look at the faces of drunk driving. And later this morning and this afternoon, we'll hear tips from law enforcement leaders and community experts on how to effectively collaborate, all with an eye on sharing ideas and learning about strategies that can be duplicated in communities across Texas. Before I get started, I just have a few announcements. For those that are looking for continuing education credits, which I know that's very important, this is available for law enforcement officers that are attending today, the summit. If you haven't signed up, please see the folks at with the Texas Municipal Police Association in the registration area. And something to note is that you'll get credits for both the morning and the afternoon, so you need to check in with them twice in order to get those full credits. So just something to remember. Restrooms are located at both ends of the ballroom, outside in the foyer in case you need those. And our first break today will be around 10:20 this morning, and we'll break for lunch at noon. The sessions this afternoon will start at 1, and we'll plan to adjourn by 5:30 today. We hope you all will stay and join the reception immediately after the summit ends. And so you can avoid the rush hour, and we all know how the traffic's here. You can get some great food, enjoy our live entertainment, and then have a chance to win some door prizes along with it. So stay around and make sure you get to do that along with it. For people that are staying in the hotels, if you're not be staying overnight tonight in San Antonio, check out time for the Hotel Contessa, and the Drury Plaza is at 11 a.m., just something to note. And check out for the Westin is at 12 noon today. As always, I know we all have phones and multiple phones. If y'all could turn those off and so that it won't disturb the speakers and everything that's going along with it, and give them our full attention. Okay. Impaired driving is a problem that we face as a state and as a nation. This morning, we're going to take a look at the extent of the problem, the progress we're making to solve it, and the new research about those who choose to drink and drive. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. William McManus is the Chief of Police for the San Antonio Police Department. He began as chief after a 30-year career in law enforcement with the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C., and then he went on to head up the departments in Dayton and Minneapolis. He also was my first crash agency, and Chief McManus and I, we worked really hard in order to get that data in and get it in faster, and he certainly is a great friend to everything that we do. Chief.
Good morning, everybody. You know, when I think about impaired driving, first thing that would pop in anybody's mind is DWI, drinking and driving while intoxicated. To me, it's more than that. If you can't keep your hands off your cell phone when you're driving, you're impaired. If you have to take a drink before you get behind the wheel, you're impaired. What I tell folks when I speak to whomever it may be, whether it's an academy class at our training division, whether it's a high school class, or colleges, whatever, don't try to gauge your sobriety by how many drinks that you have. Don't try to gauge your ability to drive a car by how many drinks you had. If you had one drink, don't get behind the wheel. Make sure you've got a designated driver, you take a cab, and anybody in here who's in law enforcement, and I see some DPS troopers around the room, they'll tell you this. They stop somebody who had one drink, and you're going to smell it. They stop somebody who had 10 drinks, they're going to smell it. Maybe a little bit stronger, but the result is going to be the same. You're going to get pulled out of your car, you're going to be subject to field sobriety tests. If you don't blow into the machine, or if you don't do well on the field sobriety tests, and you're in Bexar County, guess where you're going next? You're going down the MAG's office. And you're not going to be able to beat it in the MAG's office either, because the officer who arrested you is going to walk down the hallway. He or she is going to get a warrant, a search warrant for your blood, and they're going to come back to the cell and say, come with me, where are we going? We're going to take your blood. No, it's okay, I'll go ahead and blow in the machine. And at that point, you know what? It's too late, because the judge has already signed the warrant, and it's going to be carried out. And if you don't want to give your blood, you know what they're going to do? They're going to strap you in a chair so you can't move, and they're going to take it forcibly. Now, DWI, impaired driving, whatever you want to call it, has been an issue forever. It is a scourge, an epidemic in Bexar County, at least Bexar County. I'm only speaking locally because that's where I am. But I know that it's an epidemic all through Texas. And those troopers who work in other areas will tell you the same thing. It's always been an issue, but it's never been made an issue until the last several years. Just like distracted driving with your cell phone. We're about to pass an ordinance in January. It's actually going to be passed this month, but it's going to go into effect in January, that you're not going to be able to use your cell phone, period, while you're in your car if you have to touch it. You can use a hands-free, but if you've got to touch your phone, it's illegal. It will be illegal in January. This is a serious, serious issue for the nation. Now we have an officer. Mike, are you in here, Mike Thornton? There you go. Do you mind, Mike? For those of you who don't know Mike Thornton, I knew he'd be here. Mike Thornton is one of our DWI officers. And when Mike was out on patrol before he became come on up here, Mike. When Mike was out on patrol, I do this to him all the time, so he's used to it. If you notice that Mike walks with a little bit of a limp, it's for a reason. When he was out on patrol, he stopped to help a driver who was pulled over on the side of, was it 410, Mike?
35 right
35. Now. And while he was out of his car, he was struck by a drunk driver who knocked him over the guardrail about 25 feet up off the surface, and he's hanging on. And I'm going to tell the story as you told it, Mike. And he's trying to kick his leg over to get back up, and he saw his leg laying in front of him on the highway. Now, Mike told me in the hospital, thank you, Mike. Mike told me in the hospital the next day that, Chief, I'm going to be back. I'll be back in September. This was 6-7 months earlier. I'll be back in September. And you would have never known that anything had happened to Mike. His spirits were up. Nothing had happened. Was the way he was acting. And when he told me that he would be back in September, I thought to myself, sure, Mike. And sure enough, he was back in September. And you know what he does now? I think I mentioned it. He's in the DWI unit. How ironic is that? Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Now, a little bit more to that story. Mike was over in Afghanistan. It was Iraq, right, Mike? Both. Okay. Mike was over in the war, and he was blown up by a IED. His Humvee was blown up by an IED, and I saw pictures of him in the hospital, although you couldn't tell it was him, because he was bandaged from head to toe, and you could see nothing. And he survived that and came back to be a police officer. And that's where he lost his leg, on the streets in San Antonio. And there have been other San Antonio police officers who were killed by drunk drivers as well in the last few years. Stephanie Brown was hit head on by a wrong-way driver. She was killed. Her father is a police officer. You imagine that scene when he showed up. So my point being is that distracted driving, drunk driving, impaired driving will take its toll on us. It'll take its toll on your family, could take its toll on your family, it could take its toll on you. So it's great that you're here today. I'm going to close with this. We started what we call Team DWI here in San Antonio about 4 years ago, I think it was, when we started seeing the numbers on our highway, that the fatalities on our highway go up. The Hotel Motel Association is involved in it. The Restaurant Association is involved in it. TxDOT's involved in it. The DA's office is involved in it. The police department's involved in it. All the stakeholders that you would think should be involved are involved in it, and we meet on a regular basis to try to figure out ways to stop the carnage, if you will. We started to identify the bars where they spent their last hours before they got involved into their crash. We started going after the bars who were serving people who are intoxicated and shouldn't have been served anymore. So we are doing a lot here. We started that 24/7, 365, no refusal. So if you get arrested, you can't refuse the tests, or if you do, you're going to get your blood drawn. We work with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, very closely in this effort. So again, thank you for being here today to continue this effort, and we look forward to sharing whatever information that you come up with at the end of the seminar. Thank you very much.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce my boss and my friend, my close friend, and TxDOT's Deputy Director, John Barton. John has spent 28 years working in many capacities at TxDOT, and he currently manages the state's transportation system and serves as our chief engineer. Texas couldn't have asked for a better or more passionate safety advocate, and here is John to look at the problem of impaired driving in our state.
Howdy. Good morning. Thank you, Carol, for that warm introduction, and to you and your entire team for putting together this summit. I'm so proud to be able to be a part of it today, and I appreciate your efforts in bringing us here together today. It's great to be back in San Antonio. My family and I love coming to San Antonio. It's a great place to come and recreate, to celebrate, to have a good time, and you know what? Apparently a lot of other Texans do that as well, because just last week, our Texas Highway magazine announced that San Antonio is the number one destination for people to come to in Texas. What a great city and a great place to be. Let's give them a round of applause for all that they do. You know, I think it's a great place because people like to come here and go to all the tourist destinations, have a good time, and it says a lot about this city. And for all of you from San Antonio, you should be proud of that. It also says a lot about us as Texans. It means we like to have a good time, and we like to celebrate and party, if you will. And we're not shy about that. So that's a good thing. But unfortunately, for some of us, we sometimes take that just a bit too far. Some of us believe that having a good time means that we should be able to drink and then get behind the wheel of a vehicle. And that's why we're here today, because that can often result in deadly situations. And Mike, I want to thank you for your bravery to come up here and share with us your story. I want to thank you for your service to our country and your service to our great state of Texas. You're an inspiration to all of us. When we look at the situation that we're faced with, DWI crashes here in Texas are happening far too often. In fact, before you and I leave this conference today, somewhere in the state of Texas, 30 DUI-related crashes are going to occur. That's happening 7 days a week, 365 days a year. When you add the numbers up, last year alone, there were over 25,000 crashes caused in the state of Texas by people who were under the influence of alcohol while they were operating a motor vehicle. That means that there were more than 1,000 people who were killed because of DUI-related drivers, and another 2,500 that were seriously injured. And this is a problem that we have to do something about, and we also have a problem because most people think it's somebody that's really, really drunk that's causing a problem. And in reality, anytime you leave a restaurant or a bar or a club or somebody else's home or the hotel or your own home and you've had just one drink, you're taking your life and the life of somebody else and putting them in your hands while you're under the influence of alcohol. Close to 1 in 3 of the fatalities that occur in Texas due to traffic-related crashes are caused by somebody that's under the influence of alcohol. And that's a sad reality. Texas has a serious problem, and it's persistent drinking and driving. We often think of third world countries having that problem, places like Arkansas or Louisiana. I was going to use Tennessee, but I'm not going to do that due to one of our guests that's here today. I'm going to say Kentucky. But in reality, when we look at the data, Texas is number one. We have more alcohol-related crashes and fatalities here in our state than any other state in the nation. And that's not a statistic where we want to be number one. So that's why we're here today. We're talking about the fact that this is just completely unacceptable, that nearly 1/3 of our fatalities are caused by Texans who are under the influence of alcohol while they're driving. And that carnage that the chief was talking about, that Mike demonstrated to us just a few minutes ago, has to stop. And it starts with you and with me. It's not somebody else's problem to solve. It's a personal responsibility that we have to take on ourselves. We have to determine ways to stop this epidemic, as the chief mentioned, and to explore ways to make a big and impactful difference. I'm asking you, are you in on this? Are you going to make this a personal mission and passion that you have to stop this carnage? I was talking to Terry Pence and Gary earlier before we got started today, and we talked about the fact that that's one of the biggest problems. People think they just come to work, get a paycheck, and go home, and it's including people like you and me in this room. And we have to get passionate about this. We have to take it on as a personal responsibility to do something about it. But before we can find solutions, we have to determine what's causing this problem. Why is it so easy for this to happen? The fact of the matter is we have too many people that are driving that think it's okay to get behind the wheel when you've had just one drink. And too many people think it's perfectly safe if you've had a beer or two to be driving around on Texas roadways. There's an old joke that Georgia Shakiris told me years ago. She really didn't, but I'm going to give her credit for it, that they took the black boxes out of all the cars that had crashes in Texas trying to figure out what was causing them, and they took the voice recording, and they played them all back, and in 9 out of 10 cases, right before the crash occurred, this is what they heard. "Hey, Bubba, hold my beer and watch this." It's just unacceptable. So here's the truth. Far too many of us are driving under the influence of alcohol, and far too many of those are getting younger. You can see the statistics here on the screen. The people that are between the ages of 17 and 34 are causing the vast majority of our crashes caused by DUI, and most of them are males. So when you do the math and you add it all up, 25% of our population are causing half of these fatal crashes. And that's something that we have to really be focused on. In fact, when you look a little deeper, you find out that we're getting younger and younger at this. After all, there's a rite of passage here in Texas. When you turn 21, by gosh, you can go out and drink, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us don't realize that there's a step of responsibility we have to take in that as well. And many of you being parents of 20-somethings, you know that turning 21 doesn't automatically make you the wisest person you'll ever be. Here's another fact that we know. Alcohol-related crashes and fatalities occur most often in the areas of the state where we have the most people. That's intuitive. And when you look at these numbers, you'll see that in Harris County, that's around the city of Houston, we have more people killed than in any other area of the state. In fact, if you take these 10 counties out of the 254 counties we have, you'll realize that 458 of those 1,000 fatalities occur in those 10 counties alone. And so we do have the opportunity to make a significant difference by focusing our efforts in the right places. Over half of the DUI crashes that are on our system also occur when you think they would. Friday night, after the football game, on Saturday night or Sunday night, in the wee hours of those mornings, around 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, when the bars are closing and people are wrapping up their parties and going home. So it's not a challenge that we don't have the science behind. A lot of you have probably seen this sign. It's in a lot of our rest areas across this state. It's got a catchy slogan, but in fact, it is a true fact. Not only does DUI extract a human toll, but it's financially consequential as well. The expenses associated with DUI-related crashes here in Texas are staggering, not only for those individuals involved in the crashes, but for us as a Texas society. When you look at the numbers, it's overwhelming. The cost of DUI-related crashes in Texas in 2013 was $7.8 billion. So let's think about that for a minute. What would $8 billion buy you? Well, if you had my wife up here, she could give you a list of things pretty quickly of what she would do with $8 billion. But as a transportation engineer and a professional in this space, I can tell you that if we had $8 billion to invest in something besides these crash-related consequences, there would be far less congestion in the state of Texas. We'd have much better maintained roadways. We'd have a lot of new roads, and in fact, we could probably afford not to have any toll roads. And I know in San Antonio, that would be a very popular thing. Mike could probably be okay out in Houston as well, wouldn't it? Think about it this way. If you can't understand that 8 billion number, and that's a hard number for most of us to think about because it's just so large. Many of you either have or are putting yourself or your children through college, and you know that on a annual basis, it costs about $25,000 per person to pay for tuition and books and fees, to pay for an apartment or a dorm room, and to buy food. $8 billion a year would pay for 79,000 students to get a full 4-year degree. That's how much it's costing us in Texas to have these alcohol-related crashes. And when you think about the individual cost, and you look at the fact that you might have higher insurance, you probably will lose your driver's license, you're going to have to pay a lot of fees and fines and legal expenses. It's over $17,000 for the individual who has a DUI once they've had a crash. But the cost of all that is important, and it's something we shouldn't forget, but it's impossible for us to equate the emotional toll. Mike was up here a minute ago. What that crash means to the families of those involved in them, a lost loved one or someone who's been permanently injured. Sean's here today with his mother. Such a brave, brilliant, great kid. Well, now he's a young man. I better stop calling him a kid. And you're going to hear from them later today, but the toll that crash has had on Sean and Jean and their family and their friends is incalculable. Appreciate you being here and your courage to continue to talk about this. You are an inspiration to me and you're my hero. I appreciate Sean. Let's give Sean a round of applause. So the population of Texas is growing steadily. We have 26 million people who are blessed to call Texas home. Most of us are born here, raised here, lived here all our lives. Others come here as fast as we can, and when we get here, we raise our hands at the border and say, thank you. Thank you, God, for letting me be in Texas. There's 26 million. That's right. 26 million people call Texas home. And each day we drive about 650 million miles. That's a lot of miles. And so people would think with more people and more traffic, we would have more DUI-related crashes as a percentage of the crashes that occur in our system. And in fact, since 2010, because of the great work that you are doing in this profession, the people in this room and those you work with across this state, we've actually seen a decrease in the percentage of crashes and the number of crashes that are caused on our roadways and the fatalities associated with them because of DUI. But we have to do more. We must do more. We can't celebrate that success and say we're there, because we're not, and we won't be until that gets to zero. We all have a role to play in bringing that number down. At your Texas Department of Transportation, we spend about $20 million per year in public education campaigns to help curb impaired driving, to warn motorists of the dangers of driving under the influence of alcohol, to fund STEP programs to get more law enforcement officers like Mike and others out there on the roadway to drive down that behavior in society and to influence those that are making poor choices. And later this afternoon, my boss, our executive director, General Joe Weber, is going to be here, and he's going to talk a little bit more about those programs, but they're critically important. And because of the diligent work that you, our law enforcement partners, our transportation safety specialists are doing, we're holding the line. But we've got to do more to keep it going downward. And when it comes to reducing that number, it has to be a crusade, as I said, that we all take on personally. It can't just be a job that we do. It's a struggle, and it will be for some time to come. But I want you to know that your Texas Department of Transportation and your leadership through Carol Rawson and Terry Pence and your Deputy Executive Director who gets to work for them will be passionate and committed to this initiative, this effort, and this crusade for as long as it takes, and as I like to say, as long as I have breath in this body. I may embarrass you for all those TxDOT employees that are in here, but I'm not going to apologize for it. Your life and the life of others is too precious. We're going to stay focused, passionate, committed, and dedicated. And I'm going to get up here and talk like I'm a Baptist preacher, although I'm in the Methodist Church, for as long as it takes for us to achieve this success. Because when it comes to reducing these crashes, nothing can be more important. Safety is TxDOT's highest priority. We talk about it every day, all day long. There's nothing that we can do that's more important And I would encourage you to remember it's not just a job, and it's certainly not a job that any of us can do alone. We need each other's help. We need each other's commitment, passion, and dedication. And by working together, we can make an impact on reducing the senseless tragedy of crashes, fatalities, and injuries caused by drunk driving in the state of Texas. We can and will make this great state a better place to live, work, recreate, raise families, and worship. And what you do is incredibly valuable and important. I want to thank you for being here today. More importantly, I want to thank you for all that you do to make this initiative of impacting driving under the influence a success. I applaud you for the great accomplishments that you've already achieved, and I applaud you for the accomplishments you're going to achieve into the future. Mike, thank you for being here and sharing your story. Sean, again, thank you, my hero, my inspiration and friend. And to all of you, thank you for what you do and allowing me to spend a few brief moments with you this morning. It's an honor and a privilege to work for you. It's an honor to have shared this morning with you. And I hope that you get a lot out of this summit. Let us know how we can help with what you're doing at the Texas Department of Transportation. May God bless all of you, and may God bless this great state of Texas. Carol, thank you.